Welcome to Life Stories. Today's tale is one of betrayal, resilience, and the power of standing up for what you've built. Olivia Harris, a dedicated koi breeder with a multi-million-dollar collection, faces an unimaginable crisis when her own sister-in-law, driven by jealousy, poisons her precious koi pond. As Olivia fights to save her life's work, she uncovers the true cost of betrayal and learns powerful lessons about legacy, love, and survival. Tune in to hear how one woman's passion for her craft becomes her greatest strength in the face of devastation. Subscribe to our channel to begin today's story. My name is Sophia Harris, and I've spent most of my life devoted to an intricate and delicate passion, koi breeding. It wasn't just a hobby for me, it was my life's work. At 36, I had one of the most renowned koi collections in the United States. A collection worth millions. Yet to me, each fish was far more than just an asset. They were living art. The culmination of decades of effort, patience, and love. My koi were meticulously bred, their bloodlines tracing back to Japan's most respected champions. Every one of them represented years of dedication. So, you can imagine the horror I felt when I saw the security footage from my home while I was away on business. I was at a symposium in New York, standing in front of some of the brightest minds in the field, when my phone buzzed with a security alert. I looked down, barely able to believe my eyes as I stared at the screen. There, on the feed, was my sister-in-law, Natalie. She was emptying gallon after gallon of bleach into my pond, and I could do nothing but watch. My heart dropped to the pit of my stomach. Thousands of miles away, I was utterly helpless. In that moment, I felt as if everything I had built was slipping through my fingers. Natalie had always resented my success. She was married to my brother, William. But her jealousy had been apparent from the moment they'd tied the knot. A former beauty queen with expensive tastes, Natalie had always tried to compete with me, to be the center of attention in the family. But she never quite measured up. I'd built my name through years of dedication, long hours, and hard work. You don't buy that kind of reputation. It's earned, one painstaking step at a time. But for Natalie, that was something she could never truly understand. These ugly fish are taking up too much space. I heard her sneer through the phone speaker, the words crackling and distorted. I couldn't even fathom the cruelty in her tone. To her, they were just fish. A nuisance. Something to be discarded in favor of a shiny new idea, a splash pad for her children. I dialed Michael, my groundskeeper, hoping against hope that he would be able to stop her. Natalie's dumping bleach into the pond, I said, forcing my voice to remain calm despite the fury rising inside me. Get there now. Activate the emergency water exchange system. I'm on my way, Michael said immediately. His voice was steady, but I could hear the urgency beneath it. Do you want me to call the police? Yes, I replied, a sharpness creeping into my tone. Get the police here. This is a crime. Before I could even hang up, a text from Natalie appeared on my screen. Did some cleaning while you were away. You can thank me later. I took a slow, steadying breath, but beneath it was an ocean of anger. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. I had allowed it to slide before, thinking it was just a misunderstanding, a careless mistake. But not this time. The last straw had been her constant attempts to undermine my work. Her snide remarks about my koi, and the complete disregard for the painstaking work I had put in. I had built a legacy with these fish, and now she was threatening to destroy it. I switched camera views on my phone, watching as Michael rushed to the pond, the gravity of the situation sinking in further. Natalie had always acted like she knew better, like she could dismiss the work of people like me as trivial. But this wasn't just a hobby to me, these fish were the product of a bloodline cultivated over generations. The emperor koi, the one she was most keen to destroy, was worth more than some people's homes. He wasn't just a fish. He was a masterpiece. I called William next. dreading what I would say but knowing I had no choice. "Your wife just poisoned millions of dollars worth of koi," I said when he picked up. "It's all on video." I could hear his sigh on the other end of the line. "Liv, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding," he said. His voice the same placating tone I'd heard 1,000 times. "She probably thought she was helping." "Helping?" I interrupted. Disbelief and rage bubbling up. "She literally said she wanted to get rid of my pond to build a splash pad for her kids." "The police are on their way." William's voice rose. But his words were weak. "Come on. They're just fish." I let out a bitter laugh. Unable to contain it. "The Emperor koi alone is worth more than Natalie's car. This isn't a family dispute. This is a crime." The police arrived shortly after that. And from the security footage, I could see Natalie's smug expression faltering. She still didn't fully grasp the magnitude of her actions. "It's just bleach," she said as officers approached. "My sister-in-law keeps these ugly fish here. And honestly, they're a hazard." I was doing her a favor. I watched, helpless, as Michael and his team rushed to try to save what they could. But I knew, deep down, that the damage had been done. The koi were already dying. The water tests confirmed the bleach levels were high enough to kill everything. And soon enough, several koi began floating lifeless in the poisoned water. I could barely breathe as I saw the vibrant colors of my koi dull to lifeless hues. This wasn't just about expensive fish. This was a legacy that had been erased. I couldn't look away from the security feed as Michael and his team worked tirelessly. But I already knew the worst. I was receiving updates from him every few minutes. His words a constant reminder of how much damage had been done. 4 dead. Including Emperor, he texted. And I felt like the ground was slipping beneath me. The others are critical. I put the phone down. The weight of what was happening too much to bear. This wasn't just about some koi fish. It was about the blood, sweat, and tears that had gone into creating something so beautiful. The koi weren't merely creatures to be admired, they were my life's work. My legacy. Each of them represented a generation of care, of careful breeding and patience. I had always known that koi were valuable, but it wasn't just their financial worth. They were living art. Delicate and fragile. Like a work of craftsmanship that couldn't be replaced. I fought back the tears, knowing that my family's history with these fish was now in jeopardy. It wasn't just about the koi, it was about everything they represented, the years of hard work. The countless sleepless nights. The sacrifices. And now, in an instant, it had all been shattered by someone I once considered family. In the midst of my turmoil, another text came through, this time. It was from William. "Please don't do this. We can work something out as a family." I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to. He was always the one to tell me to let it go when things went wrong. But this time, I wasn't going to back down. I was tired of letting Natalie's behavior slide. I was tired of pretending that her resentment didn't have consequences. This was the last straw. I called the North American Koi Association. They needed to be informed of what had happened. It wasn't just a local issue, this was a matter that could affect the reputation of the entire community. "Olivia, this is a disaster," the president said when he picked up the phone. "Those bloodlines, do you need me to contact our lawyers?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I want the full weight of the association behind us. Natalie needs to understand exactly what she's done." As I hung up, I couldn't shake the growing feeling of disbelief. How could she not see the gravity of her actions? In the security feed, I saw the police officers questioning Natalie, who had now become defensive. "You can't arrest me over some fish," she exclaimed. Her arms crossed. "They're just fish. If anything, I was helping." Her arrogance was staggering. I watched as she tried to defend herself, not understanding the damage she had caused. But this wasn't about some petty argument between family members. It was about theft, destruction of property, and, in many ways, a destruction of who I was. I was no longer just a woman with a collection of koi. I was someone who had invested years of my life into preserving an art form. And that had now been taken from me in a way I could not undo. Meanwhile, Michael's updates continued to roll in. The recovery team is here. But the damage is severe, he wrote. We've lost several koi already, including Emperor. It was a punch to the gut. I had always known that Emperor, the stunning platinum and gold koi, was more than just a fish. His bloodline was legendary. To lose him was to lose a piece of history. His offspring were worth tens of thousands of dollars each. And his legacy was irreplaceable. Now, all of that was gone. I picked up the phone again. This time calling my lawyer. I needed to start the process of making sure everything was documented. I needed every piece of evidence to ensure that Natalie would face the consequences of her actions. The police were already involved. And as much as I dreaded it, I knew that the only way to make sure she understood the severity of what she had done was through the legal system. In the meantime, William continued to text me. He was desperate to smooth things over. Liv, can't we just work this out as a family? We don't need to involve the police. But it was too late for that. The damage was done. And no amount of pleading would change the fact that my koi were gone. I turned off my phone and sat in silence, staring at the pond that once shimmered with life. Now, it was a graveyard. The water polluted. The koi floating lifeless. I couldn't help but think about how many times I had forgiven Natalie's small slights. How many times I had brushed off her insults, thinking she would eventually come around. But I was done. This time, there would be no forgiveness. The next few days were a blur of legal paperwork, phone calls, and endless communication with my lawyer. But amidst it all, the one thing that kept me going was the understanding that I wasn't alone in this fight. The koi community stood behind me. The association's lawyers were on my side. And they were working tirelessly to ensure that Natalie would be held accountable. I knew this battle would not be easy, but I was prepared for it. I had spent years building my koi collection, and I wasn't going to let someone like Natalie destroy it without facing the consequences. The legal fight was just beginning, but I was ready. I wasn't going to let this go. The days that followed were some of the most difficult of my life. The koi had been my world, my passion, and to see them floating lifeless in the poisoned water was a grief I could hardly put into words. I knew, deep down, that nothing could truly bring them back. They were more than just fish, they were my legacy. And with their loss, something essential inside me had broken. But even as the devastation weighed heavy on my heart, I knew I couldn't let it consume me. I had worked too hard for too long to let Natalie's thoughtless destruction define me. The police report was filed, and the lawyers began to prepare for what would surely be a long, arduous legal battle. The Koi Association was actively involved, backing me every step of the way. I knew they understood the importance of what had been taken from me, not just financially but culturally. These koi weren't just prized possessions, they were living history, carrying forward bloodlines that had been carefully cultivated for generations. They weren't like ordinary pets, and I needed to make that clear to the police, to my family, and most importantly, to Natalie. But the hardest part was the emotional toll it took on me. I had always prided myself on being calm, composed, and in control, but this was different. I was angry, hurt, and devastated. I had never imagined that someone I once called family would do something so cruel, so thoughtless. As I sat by the pond, the silence was deafening. Michael and his team had done everything they could, but the damage was irreversible. Emperor, the pride of my collection, had fought for 36 hours after the bleach had been introduced into the water. But in the end, even he couldn't survive. His once platinum scales had dulled to a ghastly ash grey. The vibrant beauty he had once embodied was now gone. It was a loss that cut deeper than I had ever anticipated. I couldn't understand how Natalie could be so indifferent. She truly believed she was doing me a favor. The arrogance, the complete lack of understanding about what she had destroyed. only deepened the wound. In the security footage, I saw her arguing with the police, still dismissing the koi as worthless. "They're just fish," she had said repeatedly. "Why do you care so much about these ugly things?" The police, to their credit, were taking the situation seriously. But it wasn't just the legal consequences that worried me. It was the message that needed to be sent. If someone could destroy millions of dollars worth of living beings and get away with it, what kind of precedent would that set? My koi weren't just expensive pets, they were legally recognized assets, akin to fine art or racehorses. And yet, to Natalie, they were simply nuisances to be discarded at will. I found myself calling my lawyer more and more, urging them to move quickly. We couldn't afford to let her get away with it. She needed to understand that there were consequences for her actions. It wasn't just about the koi anymore. It was about the principle. About standing up for what was mine, and ensuring that something like this never happened again. But despite everything, the hardest conversations were the ones with William. My brother, who had always been my closest confidant, was struggling with the situation. He was caught between his loyalty to his wife and his understanding of what was at stake. "Liv, can we just sort this out as a family?" he had asked over and over. "I know Natalie made a mistake, but this isn't the way to handle it." I had heard those words from him before. I had heard him tell me to let things slide, to let the small things go for the sake of family peace. But this wasn't a small thing. This wasn't a petty argument over an offhand comment or a forgotten promise. This was destruction of something irreplaceable. Of something I had spent my entire life building. "I don't know if I can forgive her this time, Will," I said one night, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything will be fine when she keeps doing things like this." "I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But we're family. We have to stick together." I shook my head, feeling the weight of his words but knowing deep down that family loyalty could only go so far. This time, the stakes were too high, and Natalie had crossed a line that I couldn't easily ignore. The next morning, I received a call from the president of the Koi Association. "Olivia," he said, his voice somber, "we're filing a civil suit for the damages. And we're bringing criminal charges. I've spoken with our lawyers. And we've got everything we need. We'll make sure Natalie understands exactly what she's done." It felt like a small victory, but at the same time, I knew the battle was just beginning. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about holding Natalie accountable for what she had done and ensuring that her actions had consequences. The koi were gone, but they weren't forgotten. And neither was I. As the weeks passed, the legal battle raged on. But the devastation Natalie had caused slowly began to feel like a distant memory. The court ruled in my favor, awarding me the damages I needed to rebuild. But the victory was bittersweet. No amount of money could replace the koi I had lost, the bloodlines that had been forever altered. But it was a start, the beginning of my journey to restore what had been taken from me. 1 year later, standing by the edge of the pond once more, I marveled at the new koi that swam gracefully through the water. Their vibrant colors shone as they glided beneath the surface, a silent testament to resilience. The security system was stronger than ever. My koi legacy fortified by the lessons learned from the most painful chapter of my life. I had rebuilt, not just my pond, but my strength, my resolve. Amanda had learned the hard way what it meant to destroy something irreplaceable. She had lost everything, her reputation, her family, and her financial stability. But I had gained something far more valuable, the knowledge that even in the face of such cruelty, I could rise again. It wasn't just about the koi anymore. It was about life, about survival, about the things we choose to protect, and the strength we find when everything seems lost. I had proven to myself, and to everyone who doubted me, that no one could take away what I had built. And as the koi swam in circles, their scales shimmering in the light, I knew that this story, my story, was far from over. There would be more chapters. more lessons, and more triumphs. Because some legacies, like beauty, like justice, are worth protecting. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more life stories.